Hi everyone, my name is Jasmine and you are watching Faithfully Uncool. This is a channel where I just plan to share any interesting or fascinating biblical topics or passages that are meaningful to my life, as well as more research-based religious studies type of biblical information that I find really fascinating as well. So if any of that interests you, I encourage you to subscribe. My other videos on this channel are about 2 years old, so my life is now working where I can keep up a more consistent uploading schedule. So I hope that you subscribe whether you're a Christian or nothing else or something else. I'm just glad that you stopped by and thanks for being here. So let's get started. So today we're going to be looking at one of my favorite relationships in the Bible, and that is the friendship between David and Jonathan. So just for a little bit of context, David is this young man chosen by God to be the king of the Israelites. I think most people know him as a popular figure because of the David and Goliath story, and it's this great example of trusting God. It's not David's strength, it's God's strength in him and his relationship with God that allows him to perform all of these great feats. And so we are known, David is known as someone after God's own heart. And so this is the characteristic that really sets David apart from people around him, most notably Saul. So Saul is the one who was appointed to be the king of the Israelites before David, but Saul does not listen to God. And so we know that through this chant that is often said in 1 Samuel 18:7, Saul has slain his thousands, David his tens of thousands, right? So Saul knows that David is going to eventually come to the kingship and replace him, and that God is with David, and that makes David really unique. And so Goliath was just the tip of the iceberg. David is going all the way up, Fat Joe style. Everything he does, military campaigns, every battle that he leads the Israelites through, he comes out successful. However, people are acclaiming that David is the reason, and Saul knows this and he's angered by this, and so he decides that he is going to kill David, and that is the only way to kind of make sure that his kingdom stays his and doesn't go to anybody else, especially someone younger and closer to God who seems to have, the people's love for him. This is all hugely threatening to Saul. And so Saul has devised that he will definitely kill David. So what do you do when the king that you fight for wants to kill you? Enter Jonathan. Jonathan and David, we're told, become really close upon meeting each other. However, Jonathan is Saul's son, and so he has this allegiance to David that actually goes above his own family and goes above even his own personal interests. Because since Saul is so hell-bent on killing David, then Jonathan's loyalty to David is a threat in and of itself, because since they have no blood relation to one another, Jonathan, by aligning himself with David and saying, I accept you, you're my friend, I'm loyal to you, they make this covenant with one another to always be loyal to one another's families, then it really shows that Jonathan is telling David essentially, not me to the throne, but you, because should Saul die, the normal succession of power would go to his sons. But Jonathan, as his son, is passing that on to David. And so their loyalty to one another is actually quite significant because of that. And it stands out so much because it goes beyond even what you would expect Jonathan to do for himself. And so it's really powerful in that way. However, Jonathan does have one caveat. He seems a bit naive sometimes of Saul's plan to actually kill David. And that's because in chapter 19, Saul tells Jonathan, no, David's safe. I'm not going to hurt David. And so chapter 20 rolls around, and David comes to Jonathan. They meet up, and David's like, why does your father want to kill me? And Jonathan's like, no, like he's fine. He doesn't want to kill you at all. And David's like, he throws spears at my head, which makes me think he's not a great fan of it when I breathe. So I forgive me. I think he lied. And so Jonathan's like, oh, okay. Well, whatever you want me to do for you, I'll do. And so it's this really powerful statement of, I'm still on your team though. And so they devise this whole plan where if Jonathan says that David should keep going, then he should stay on the run. He shouldn't return to the palace. But if he says to come back, that everything's safe, then David should come back. And so as the plan works out, Jonathan gets it confirmed that Saul wants to kill David. He knows it for sure now. And so he tells David to keep going. And it's this really heartbreaking separation that happens in chapter 20, where they remember the covenant that they've made to one another of loyalty and promise to one another to honor each other and their descendants. However, they're probably not going to see each other again. And so it's this sad parting between David and Jonathan. But I think there are some really important things about friendship that we can learn from this passage. So the first thing we can learn about David and Jonathan is loyalty. Not only are David and Jonathan loyal to one another, but they have this great show of trust. And I think that loyalty and trust are the most obvious ones that come out of David and Jonathan's friendship. Of course, they have the covenant, and that's a very outward example of trust and loyalty that says, hey, no matter what happens, no matter how my father Saul feels, I am on your team. And so please honor my descendants. And so David actually does this with Jonathan after Jonathan's death. David honors Jonathan's son Mephibosheth, but that happens in 2 Samuel. It's this whole thing. But loyalty and trust is definitely present in their relationship, and it's really clear. And I think that for us today, in all of our relationships, including our friendships, loyalty and trust matters so much. And the reason is really because we show, number two, the second thing we can learn with David and Jonathan, we show a lot of vulnerability with people who we can be very loyal and trustworthy, almost said trustworthy with. And so David doesn't just figure out that Saul wants to kill him and go, you know what? It's been a great run at the royal court, but now that my life is in danger, I'm thinking it's time to roll out. Like, he actually enlists Jonathan's help and is like, hey, I don't really understand what's going on with your dad, but he seems crazy. And he and Jonathan devise that whole plan in chapter 20, and that's what leads up to David leaving anyway. And it says in chapter 20, verse 41, that when they part ways, David wept the loudest or wept the most or something like that. And I think it's really because not only is he leaving the person who he is most loyal to, he's also leaving the person who he trusts the most, and of course going on the run. So it's this huge heartbreaking thing in and of itself, but there's a lot of loyalty and trust present that's so clear in all of their interactions, and that we can really learn and understand as readers and believers today. Second thing, as I said, was that vulnerability and the fact that sometimes when we're going through something, we feel really alone or like nobody understands us, it's really easy to shut down. I know for myself, it's really easy to shut down and not want to enlist the help of anybody. But David does that, and that can be really difficult. Asking for help, I'm sure we've all experienced moments where you just want to be able to do something by yourself, but you're not. And so David is really never alone. He always has God, but he also has that social intimacy aspect. We're all social creatures, and he has that social intimacy aspect of a really great friend fulfilled in Jonathan. The third thing is not really a principle, but it's more of just an observation I had while reading. And that is, while I was reading, I often thought, oh wow, it'd be really cool to have a friend like Jonathan. And I'm so grateful for the friends that I do have that are very close to me like that. And I think that Jonathan and David's relationship is what I've heard somebody say once as 2 a.m. friends. Like, they're the friends that you could call if you're drunk. I mean, if you don't drink, if you eat too many Oreos, or you're in a sobbing ball because Game of Thrones is on hiatus and you have no idea what to do with your life. These are the friends that you call at 2 a.m. to talk to about anything, anywhere, at any time. And so I think that we all value the people in our life who are like that. But if you feel like that part of you is missing, or that you don't have a lot of friends like that, or maybe you've reached a point in your life where you were in high school or college, or you started a new job or something, or in a new city, and it's really hard to settle down, and so you don't have friends like that immediately near you, then try to really challenge yourself to go out with people and meet people and invite people places. And so we think of this so much in dating. We think like, oh, like, you want to find the one? Well, be the one. Like, things like that when it comes to romance. But in friendship, that's really important too. If you want to find a great friend, be a great friend. And if you're feeling like you're in a place where it's hard to make friends, especially as you're an adult, then really put yourself out there to where you are making friends, and you're inviting people to go out to eat. You're inviting people to do things that you already like to do, or you're joining events, or, at your church or in your community, or you're joining clubs, so that you're building friendships in a very natural way. And so once you build those friendships in a very natural way, that's where all that loyalty, trust, and vulnerability come from, is that we're already having that common bond, and so we're just deepening the relationship through that. So I know I make it sound easy, and it's not easy. Everything is easier said than done. I know that there can be a lot of anxiety that comes up with meeting new people, but it's always good to sort of exercise our vulnerability muscle or dare ourselves to do the things that we're afraid of doing. And if that's making friends, or if that's making yourself more available to people, then so be it. You know, you got this. So that's all I have for you today. I hope that that was something that encouraged you and interested you and was an interesting video to read about. If you are interested in this kind of stuff, I really recommend reading 1 Samuel 17 to 20 just for starters, because that's where a lot of David and Jonathan stuff takes place. It's really fascinating to read about David's story in general, and in his whole life through 1 Samuel to 2 Samuel. So really encourage you to take a look at that if you're just not familiar with a lot of what I was talking about in terms of David and Jonathan. There's so much more that I think could be mentioned in this video and other videos. So subscribe if this is something that you like to hear, and thanks for watching. Go in peace.